Way to go, Tic Tac!
That's how you punch.
Wakanda forever!
You wouldn't have heard of me.
Let me put you on hold.
Dance off, bro! He's a friend from work!
I can do this all day.
Yeah, I know.
What up, guys? It's Dom, and welcome back to another movie review. Today we are going over and ranking Blink Twice. Blink Twice, released in 2024, written and directed by Zoe Kravitz. When tech billionaire Slater King meets cocktail waitress Frida at a fundraising gala, he invites her to join him and his friends on a dream vacation on his private island. As strange things start to happen, Frida questions her reality. Now, this movie was requested to me by one of my viewers, and I didn't really know too much about this movie going into it. I saw some things in like the trailer and stuff, but I didn't really research it much. And once it got to that second half of the movie, it got really, really intense, especially since I wasn't expecting it to be as intense. So without further ado, let's just get right into the 10 essential aspects of a movie. The first essential aspect is plot. Now, overall, I think the plot of this movie was good. I just feel like it wasn't paced too well. I feel like there was a lot of plot holes that were clearly visible, especially the ending. I feel like one of the more important parts, the ending, was just a whole mystery to me. I'm not sure how it went from one scene to that last scene. I just had no context, and it did confuse me a little bit. I didn't really expect it. I didn't know what was going on. So other than the plot holes and the clear issues of pacing, I feel like the plot was good. The story was interesting. It was definitely intriguing. I did want to see what happened next. It's just unfortunate that what happened next didn't really coincide with the rest of it. The second essential aspect is attraction. Now, I feel like you have to be in a specific mood to watch this kind of movie. It does cover a lot of serious topics. It even has a disclaimer at the beginning of the movie, just in case if you're not sure what you're getting into. Obviously, it does cover a lot of domestic abuse and domestic violence in a sort of nature. But it is very serious. So if you're going to see this movie, definitely be prepared for that. And it definitely isn't an entertainment movie. It's not meant to entertain. It's more meant to inform and kind of show that this is something that's realistic. This is something that can happen and what the situation might be. Now, of course, this is with a billionaire taking them to a private island, which that might not happen too often. But still, the general theme of this is what might happen. So I guess watching the movie to get informed is something that you're definitely going to be attracted to. And honestly, I was very interested in seeing this plot and seeing this movie and seeing what happens. The suspense is really the part that locked me into this movie. But otherwise, I mean, entertainment-wise, it's not meant to entertain. So I can't say it checks attraction off in that way. The third essential aspect is theme. Don't get on a plane with a random person you do not know to their private island that has no cell service just because you think it'll be a fun time. That's the message it's trying to tell you, so don't do that. The fourth essential aspect is dialogue. I feel like the dialogue in this movie was very important because since Frida is in this loop and all of the people on the island are on this loop and they almost keep repeating the same day, not really, but because of something that I'm not going to spoil, they keep repeating the same day. So hearing that dialogue constantly be the same words in the same order for a lot of the movie gets you kind of locked on that, and you start to understand slowly. And then when they start changing and it's not exactly how it's supposed to be, that's when you really key in on it, and that's when you realize that this is a loop, that this is something that can be broken, that it's starting already to break. And that gets you invested more in the movie because now you want to see what happens next. So I have to say the dialogue, everyone did fine for conversations wise, and it felt real in some ways, didn't feel real in other ways, but that part specifically I wanted to talk about because it's such a big part of the movie. The fifth essential aspect is acting. Now, all the acting in this movie was good. I mean, there wasn't any big issues when it came to the acting. Channing Tatum, who played Slater, he did definitely the best job. He was the star of this movie, even though it was really Frida, but him specifically, when he was on screen, he was very convincing in his role. So I do have to give him props for that, but no one really did a bad job with acting. The sixth essential aspect is cinematography. Now, the cinematography is something this movie does well, because with visuals wise, I mean, the island looks really good. The area they're in, where most of the movie is shot, is a very cool area and very visually appealing. And when it came to the emotions, I mean, they knew how to get the audience really feel intense, feel scared for the girls and the guys that were on that island and kind of fearing on their behalf. So it did a good job of getting you invested in the movie and invested in the characters, and you want just the whole thing to stop. So I think it definitely did a good job emotion-wise because it got the audience hooked in that way. The seventh essential aspect is editing. This movie is an hour and 42 minutes long, and I think that is a good length. It had enough time to actually be able to develop the specific characters to obviously get that emotional connection, as well as giving them a little bit of a backstory to include on when it had to come back to that. So that was good, and it wasn't so long that it was kind of getting boring or getting especially the loop, since a lot of it is repeated. Seeing that for too long could be it could hurt the movie a lot more than improve on it. So I am glad that they kept it well below that 2-hour mark, because that's exactly where it should have been. I really don't think this time should be changed at all. But of course, the pacing of the movie is something that should be changed because it didn't help the plot in the way that I think they hoped. The eighth essential aspect is soundtrack. Now, obviously, I usually don't talk about the soundtrack, but this time I did. Not specifically for what the soundtrack was, but what it did. So just like in dialogue, you hear the same soundtrack throughout the whole time that you're stuck in the loop. Once that loop gets broken, you start hearing more scarier and eerier tones to kind of emulate the fact that they know that they are in danger now. It's not just happy time, fun, stuck in the same best day ever kind of loop. So that I had to give them props for, because they could have just completely avoided that, just played a different soundtrack every single time and no one really would have noticed. But they did put into effort in making sure that this soundtrack was also a part of that loop. So that I have to give them credit for. The ninth essential aspect is directing. So I think it is the director's job to take these previous 8 essential aspects, put them together to make a movie that's worth watching. And the director of this movie is Zoe Kravitz, and this is actually her first movie that she's directed. It's the only one she's directed. So I feel like as a first-timer, she did a really good job. She knew how to capture the emotions for the audience. She knew how to make the movie look good and knew how to have all the actors actually act well and what lines to give them, since she was also the writer. And the only problem, obviously, that I had with it was the plot issues, was the plot holes, and the pacing of the movie. But that is as big of a thing as plot is, and plot holes really do damage the movie. I feel like as that being the only thing wrong with this movie, she did do a really good job on her first time. And the 10th essential aspect is time. I think that this movie will stand the test of time in one category specifically, and that is the discussion it brings on domestic abuse and all these serious topics that come up in this movie. So as a movie in its own, maybe it will, maybe it won't, not sure, it just came out. But as a movie that actually comes forth and talks about these topics, that in that way it will probably stand the test of time. Now, onto the reviews. So, Rotten Tomatoes critics gave it a 75%, Rotten Tomatoes audience gave it a 70%, and IMDb gave it a 65%. Now, honestly, I'm not upset with any of these ratings. I would give it from somewhere from that 65 to 75%. I think it would be higher if they didn't have the plot issues it had. But otherwise, everything else in the movie was pretty good. It definitely is slightly above that mid-movie. It definitely is worth a watch if you haven't. It's also not worth a rewatch. So that's why I think it does belong in that 70-ish range. So I'm not mad with any of these. And finally, the rankings. So, in 2024, it's going to rank 8th above The Union and below The Fall Guy. Now, it's above The Union because The Union is one of those movies where I probably won't ever rewatch. It was interesting of a movie while I was watching it, but it was kind of forgettable. Now, it was still a great movie, and I loved watching it, and I loved the concept it had behind it with the whole blue-collar worker undercover agency. But other than that, it is kind of a forgettable movie, and it was obviously good in the moment, but this movie is a lot better. And even though it has some plot problems, I feel like the whole concept behind it definitely surpasses The Union by a lot, and the acting alone also I feel like is much better than The Union. So bringing those two things together kind of does surpass it. And it's below The Fall Guy because The Fall Guy is a really good movie. The Fall Guy has great acting, great cinematography. It does have an emotional impact, and it doesn't have any plot problems. So the fact that it doesn't have any plot problems, Blink Twice does, that definitely helps me choose that to be above it. And in the 2020s, it's going to be the same deal. It's going to be 8th above The Union and below The Fall Guy. I'm not going to waste your guys' time and discuss why, since I just did. And in all time, it's going to be 24th, above 127 hours, and below The Fall Guy. Now, again, I'm not going to discuss why it's below The Fall Guy, since I just did as well. But it's above 127 hours because I feel like it's more of an interesting story. Now, 127 hours, it was based on a true story, obviously. But I feel like just the way that they made that movie, it wasn't as interesting of a topic because it was just him trying to escape the cave, which is cool, and it was cool to see and seeing how he actually did it. I just feel like because the topics and concepts covered in Blink Twice kind of were more attention drawing, that's what really made the space in between them for me. So I couldn't see myself putting it below 127 hours and definitely not above The Fall Guy. That's all I have for Blink Twice. If you guys enjoyed this review, make sure to leave a like and subscribe, and make sure to comment a movie you want me to review next. I think one of the next movies I'm going to be watching is The Bad Omen, since it was also requested to me. But who knows, if I can't find the time right now, because I am obviously working, if I can't find the time right now, then the next movie will just be my one a week that I do that are in theaters. But either way, make sure to check out the description. Check out Mr. Majoritarian. He is my best friend. He is the one that got me into movie reviewing. I would love for his channel to start growing as much as mine does, because mine did explode, which thank you to all of you who helped with that. And he always does this. He does a lot of the same movies that I do, especially the ones that come up once a week that we both watch at the same time, that are in theaters. And his perspective is a lot different than mine. He gets a lot in depth with a lot of his reviews, while I feel like sometimes I might not get as in depth, but I just cover the general topics. So if you want something that's way more specific, definitely check him out. Plus, especially with the Marvel movies, I'm a Marvel guy, so I will give them the benefit of the doubt. While he is not really a Marvel guy, he's not really into those movies as much as I am, so you will get a much more unbiased opinion from him. So definitely check him out. He's a great movie reviewer. I think you guys would enjoy it if you do enjoy watching my videos, of course. And that's all I just said that's all I have. I'm already having a brain fart because I've just been talking for so long in a row. But either way, I hope you guys have an amazing night. Peace out.